I thought the best actors were the ones in the with the hit and run scene. I thought a lot. Both the dad and the two barristers were really quite good. I think the acting in the wedding one wasn't great, but it was so chaotic that it didn't really matter because there wasn't any like as intimate moments like some of the other ones.
The wedding one was meant to be over the top though and exaggerated.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
But I did quite like the fact that it was the whole film. It seemed quite simple from the point of it wasn't expansive or kind of aspirational in its cinematography or the lighting wasn't particularly amazing or they didn't go heavy on any special effects. I like the kind of simplicity in the way it felt that it had been filmed. It felt like it was from a viewer's eye rather than a cinematic experience. And I don't know if that was partly budget, but it didn't feel like a cheap film because of it. I think it lent into the theme, I guess.
You say that, but I felt that there were so many interesting angles. The way that the camera moved throughout a lot of those short stories was really incredible. Even the plane scene, you see the first opening scene walking on the shoes, then there's a really interesting shot of her literally as she opens up the cabin seat shooting down her. There's an interesting shot as they pull back out of the plane as they're in the air. There's a lot of really interesting camera movement, I think, in all of the individual scenes, which I agree with you, there's not many special effects, but other than some badass explosions at times. But I thought the camera movement, there was a lot of life brought into each of the short stories through that.
There was an interesting move that they did a couple of times, like to your point, where they had the camera like attached to either the vehicle, like it was moving.
Yeah, they use GoPros a lot.
The back, it looked like it was extended on an arm off the bumper of the vehicle, and so like when the car was moving, the camera was also moving. And then the wedding scene at the end, when she thunders through the door, the camera comes out as if it's moved to the handle of the door.
Yeah,
it's GoPros or something equivalent to a GoPro, a smaller camera attached to it. I don't think they use that throughout it.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, well, so we're all in agreement that we quite liked it then. It's that usual question of what could have been done better, do you think? What would have sold it to you further? Liam? It's really difficult, isn't it? Because it is when it's a collection of loads of different short stories, it's not something that you can critique as a whole, because there's not enough of an entire sort of thing to.
Each of the stories were so consistently compelling, and like whatever the effect of one tale was always contributing to my enjoyment of the next. That it just felt like the whole thing. It was just a pretty sweet package. I felt on edge the entire time. I never necessarily felt. I didn't feel an emotional hit particularly with any of the stories, just because they were so absurd. The only one really, as I say, was that one in the middle with the matey who loses his family and his job and all that. But I don't think that the film was trying to do that. I think it was trying to present, human nature. Sometimes you have a decision to get out of a situation and get out well, and human nature takes over and it kind of makes everything quite ruinous. And I think that general theme was got across pretty well in each of the stories. So what I mean to say is that it did what it said in the tin. I don't think it tried for any more than that. And I don't think I have any gripes, really.
I probably agree with you, to be honest. There, it's one of those. It's because it was pieced together so well that gripes you could have had didn't really emerge in a way. Again, even just the order of it as an anthology, it worked really nicely, and each film sort of rolled into and complemented the next in terms of satisfaction. Do you think
that they could have made a film like this in the UK, or do you think that those types of scenarios could have been dreamt up by like a British bloke? Or
I do. I think the fact that you empathise with a lot of the emotions that the characters are going through. That's why you're able to invest in it, because with short stories broken up like this, you're never going to be able to have a sort of a fleshed out character or real emotional attachment to an individual. But I think you can relate to the internal struggle, I guess, or the internal emotions that lead to the reactions in each tale. Like the conflict of the waitress and the second tale at the restaurant, of having this utter contempt for the individual, but then not wanting to overstep a mark and go to murder. The frustration felt by the engineer throughout the situation that we've been put in, everyone could have empathised with. Obviously, we'd not always have taken their actions, but I think that's enough to kind of carry it through for you. So I think that those feelings are probably fairly universal. I mean, it's not coming from a wildly different civilization, is it? Argentina and where it was filmed. It's just the language, I think.
So even if the action is extreme and the whole, like, the way the scene's dressed up is absurd, whatever idea is being dealt with is pretty universal.
Yeah, for taking them on with the engineer, you would love to do that if you were in that situation. That's a reaction you would love to have. Obviously, people wouldn't step to a mark that far. Or the father trying to protect his son, but then at the same time being conflicted and not wanting to be done over by people trying to take advantage of him. They're all kind of emotions that you could imagine that. So they're not wildly kind of distinct from anyone's reality.
But do you think we accept
I think
them?
it would translate well into different culture.
Do you think we accept them though, just because it is slightly detached from what we're used to? Like, if we were watching a British cast do a British road rage thing or something like that, I don't know. Maybe it wouldn't. Maybe we wouldn't be quite as accepting of the the obscurity of it all, and I don't know. It's that foreign film kind of thing, that because we're from the UK, that we view things differently. And if there was a UK one like that made over here with those kind of ridiculous stories, would we just view it differently?
No, I think because the outcome of each tale isn't. It's nothing that would realistically happen in your day-to-day life. You understand it's fiction, so I think it would translate fine, because you would understand the genre. It would just happen to be in our language. I think would be the only difference. I think if you were seeing these scenarios play out in a British context within the framework of the genre and the way it was filmed, I think you would still have the same reaction to it, because you understand.
The same. I feel like we're just a lot more reserved here. I feel like perhaps if we had the thought, it would exist more like a dream, like a kind of like, imaginative sequence in our brain, as opposed to anything we'd even, seriously.
That's what these are.
Enacting.
These are imaginative sequences in people's brains. So you're never going to have a flight populated with everyone you hate, and you're the pilot, and you're going to crash it to get revenge on. That's the whole point. That's what the film is, isn't it? So
in other sequences where they are less extreme, and in other sequences they are less extreme, like that, all those shenanigans on the road and these sorts of things. I just feel like perhaps, and I don't know the Argentinian culture, but I wonder whether, in general, their character or their personality means that they are more willing to step over that mark and make a stand for themselves, or kind of just fuck around. I just wonder whether there is more of an intensity.
I think you're grasping for a link that isn't there. I think the idea of the film is that it isn't reality. No matter what kind of cultural, I guess, stereotypes are. I didn't see that link there personally.
No, it was interesting it being in Spanish.
I just wonder whether a film like that could have been made here, and whether the action or the scenes would have been as whether we could find.
I absolutely think it could definitely be made in almost any country that's that's civilized to the same degree as the UK or it is in Buenos Aires. I think there wasn't anything uniquely Argentinian about that style of film or anything like that, unless that perhaps it is more common. I don't know. I've not watched many Argentinian films, but I don't think the fact that it was Argentinian was a defining point of the film in any way. It could have been made in any language with any developed nation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
James,
Argentina-
what-
That's what I wonder. I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I don't think an Argentinian would watch that film and culturally relate to it because they're Argentinian. I think it would. Yeah, I think it's purely the fact it was made in that country. If it was made here, I think equally as.
I think it still would. James, what do you think? What do you think about
Yeah, I agree with Tom and Jem, and that I think that the reason this film works is that it's just a collection of short stories. It needs to give you something to latch onto fairly quickly, and so you can reach a level of understanding or empathization with each of the characters within those 6 stories, and quite quickly understand their plight. But then for it to be flipped to that almost absurd kind of level is what brings the point to life, or brings that catharsis at the end. And in that respect, I think it could be done. It could quite easily be translated across and any different language there. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that too. All I wondered was whether there was any cultural, influence on the action that's playing out, or whether it was just solely ideas, in absurd form. But yeah, not sure where I sit on.
I mean, the 2-hour runtime made no difference to me whatsoever. I probably could have watched another hour's worth of this premium content. Just because it is different stories every time, it makes it so much easier, doesn't it? So runtime really, duration really wasn't a thing at all this time.
Do you have preferred more stories or more in each story?
More stories, I
Good
think.
question.
Yeah, good question. More stories as well. I agree with Guy.
I think more stories. What about you, Jem?
If they were to the same standard as that, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a really good question, Jem.
It would make it more complex in terms of, what just the imagination behind the stories. You've got to keep it coming and make sure that they all fit in this order that is appropriate, which doesn't mean you get something like the guy blowing up the tow truck one, maybe fitting in the middle and people going is a bit dull in pace compared to the others. Because if it gets to a 3-hour anthology, you're going to have a dip somewhere. And likewise, if it was longer stories, the wedding one was the longest, and I was thinking no longer than that, ideally, because even that one, it was getting very over the top from the start, to be honest. But it's if you make it longer, does it need to be more at that level the whole time, or does it just get too ridiculous by that point? Does it get too absurd? So for me personally, I think more stories, but there's just because I think it's the simplicity of watching it. They're all very well written,
they got the pacing
very interesting.
Right.
Yeah,
They got the pacing right with each story. Like, in no story were you left in the lurch going, "Oh, I could have done with a little bit more on that." But at the same time, you weren't ever there wasn't ever too much in every story. Every story left you slightly wanting a little bit more. Just seeing where it went after the guy got hit in the head with a hammer after he came out in front of the paparazzi, or seeing whether that was a dream in the prison, or it left you asking just a couple of little questions at the end of every single story. That was obviously intentional, but was quite good rather than just immediately answering them and then moving on to the next one.